Hello, welcome back to Marathon Man, where I'm going through Doctor Who from the very beginning, and you join me at the first appearance of the Great Intelligence. So, I reckon, for years, I had Victoria all wrong. Until my last marathon, I really couldn't get along with her, and I mean, she hardly impresses in her debut story, so I always think I'm going to revert to not liking her again, and then all of a sudden she's, standing up to ruthless killers, she's taking out cybermats, and she's even using a scaredy cat image and everyone's assumptions about her against them. It's fair to say that she impressed a great deal in the Tomb of the Cybermen. She had very quickly a warm and believable friendship with Jamie and an extremely touching relationship with the Doctor. And I can't quite believe how mistaken I was in the past. I mean, she actually seems to have a better induction than most companions, and she emerges from her first adventure in the TARDIS as a more rounded and believable character than certainly Dodo, but perhaps even Polly and Ben too. After Tomb of the Cybermen, this felt like the strongest TARDIS team in a long time. She continues that upward trajectory in this story too. She fits right in, she stands up for the Doctor, she's even a little bit of a rebel when she's trying to convince Tommy off the straight and narrow by investigating the forbidden. Truth be told, she actually turns out to be one of the very best things in the Abominable Snowmen. It's shocking when she gets poisoned, and then to discover that it's actually another one of her little ruses. It just goes to show that there's quite a lot more to Victoria than I thought. I could just never remember that, but why? I mean, at this rate, she's going to be shooting up my favourite companion list quicker than the characters in this story can scale mountains. Because they do that an awful lot here, and, I mean, pretty quickly. I'm not saying that the TARDIS or the cave are necessarily at the summit and the monastery is right at the bottom, but all the traipsing back and forth and up and down just get incredibly tedious. And what I meant when I said Victoria is one of the very best things in the Abominable Snowmen, I think maybe what I might have meant is she's one of the few good things. Sorry, I just think it's dull. Just plain dull. And how on earth it manages that, being set in the Himalaya with gigantic Yeti roaming around and a 300-plus-year-old scary-looking possessed geezer, I don't know. But what I can tell you is it pulls it off. I haven't been this bored watching a Doctor Who story for a good while. These days, unlike the last time I marathoned, there's an animation for this one, which is actually fairly good, and naturally, along with the many other Triton animations we have now, helps to ease what could become recon fatigue. But however grateful I am for the animations of missing episodes, and however solid this animation is, I still found the story as arduous as I do when watching the recons. The Yeti are good monsters really, in terms of their design being memorable, but there seems to be one major problem with this story, and that is they're too damn cuddly. Their movement is far too cumbersome to be terribly efficient, and looking like giant teddy bears doesn't really make them all that menacing. If the production team were looking to create a monster that could comfortably sit up there with the Daleks and the Cybermen, then in my opinion, I don't think they quite managed it. Yeah, okay, they came back twice, including a brief appearance in the Five Doctors, and they were deemed worthy enough to be included in, future photo shoots. It's just that they don't really land for me, and what doesn't help is the fact that they're not the villain. They're controlled by the Great Intelligence, which, when it was resurrected for Series 7, rather tellingly, came back with 0 Yeti. Now, I think that's probably because, as a villain, the Great Intelligence is far more effective an idea than the titular Abominable Snowmen. It's an intriguing idea for an antagonist, a shapeless, formless, malevolent intelligence, and it's really quite creepy when you think about it, and the fact that it's keeping Padmasambhava alive for as long as it does is really ghoulish, plus the appearance of the aged High Lama is particularly gruesome. But I think, as with the Abominable Snowmen, as with the Yeti, the Great Intelligence does also come with its own set of problems. Mainly that I feel like the story approaches the concept so, quite lifelessly. When it speaks through Padmasambhava, it does so
bloody slowly.
I guess that chosen voice is meant to sound menacing and scary, like the animus in the Web Planet, but all it serves to do, for me, is try my patience even more in a story which is already doing so. While watching this story, I realised that once completed, I'd only have 20 missing episodes left, and 11 of those are now animated, which means I've only got 9 recons left to do. And the thought of that sort of like perked me up quite a bit. And I only mention it because I counted how many missing Tibetan episodes I had left while I was actually watching this story. I'm sorry to say it's because my mind wandered terribly during watching this story. I made my missing Tibetan recon animation episode calculations when everything just seemed to slow to the pace of a glacier. I couldn't help it, this story seemed to be doing very little to keep me involved. And I was hoping for a different outcome this time because, bearing in mind season 4, I liked every story a little bit more than I used to. And I've never particularly enjoyed the Abominable Snowmen. So I did think, oh, well, maybe this time, considering what happened in episode 4, plus I hadn't seen the animation before, I thought maybe that the Abominable Snowmen will be, maybe it's time for that story to shine. But again, this time I just couldn't get on with it. The climax where the Doctor faces off against the possessed Padmasambhava is actually quite good, but the thing is, it's taken so long to get there and been like very unsatisfying along the way that it arrives at a point where it barely registered because I couldn't give a shit. As is my mission, I seek to find something to like in every story, and with Tibetan as the Doctor in this one, it's really not difficult, especially now that he's accompanied by Hines and Watling as his travelling buddies. He is brilliant when the Doctor is accused of murder and a delightful presence when being held in a cell. He just owns the show to the same level as, but in a completely different way from Hartnell. If the Doctor has already morphed into the character we recognise today, then I think it's with season 5, possibly maybe at the end of season 4 actually, that the show itself has begun to morph into the one which audiences are familiar with in the 21st century, particularly as we are now firmly acquainted with the pseudo-historical. Regardless of its purity as a historical, it's still really nice to see Tibetan's Doctor in Earth's past. It's a recognisable trope of the Doctor Who which came before, but with something new thrown in. The second Doctor will become associated with moon bases and space stations, but little jaunts to the past like this remind us that it's the same Doctor Who we've been watching since the very beginning, just from a different angle. It also helps that in this story the sets and the locations are very, very good. The man himself has some of the usual Doctor zingers and obviously deploys them all to perfection. Shooing Victoria away when Jamie says he's got a good idea is glorious, as is his concern that Jamie might mend the bagpipes in the TARDIS, and
what's he going to do? Bang a rock at it.
Followed fairly closely by,
I mean, look at him. Would you walk up to a creature like that with just a screwdriver in your hand? Well, I would not. Well, there you are. I'm really rather pleased with myself.
All serve to highlight just how excellent this Doctor is and how excellent Troughton is at playing him. They came to get their ball back is a lovely moment.
They came to get their ball back.
I only recently watched a clip of Troughton at the convention that he sadly died at. He did a panel. And I was watching that, and in that he says that that's one of the few things that he improvised himself, which only goes to show the man was superb. I don't think it can be overstated just how ingenious Troughton's approach to the role was. Just enough nuggets to hint that he's the same man as Hartnell, but giving himself enough room to craft what is essentially an entirely different character as well. It's an absolute masterstroke. Jamie and Victoria work really well together too, with Jamie the more experienced in time travel and in life with the Doctor, but Victoria being 100 years more advanced in knowledge. It makes for an interesting dynamic. Now, both are fairly unfamiliar with technology and things beyond their own times, yet Victoria has a slight edge. It's really nice detailing in a pair that really works in unison. Travers is a sod, but he's played very well by Watling Sr., who finds a way to make the character not boring when, all he essentially does is moan at the Doctor and get a bit sick. 179 episodes behind me now, and at about 3 episodes too long, maybe 4, I'm not going to say 5. The Abominable Snowmen finishes, and it leaves me slightly glad that it's done so. I'm relieved to be leaving the mountain and the snow behind and forging into something new. I know. Victoria pretending to be poisoned. Not only, I mean, it's a fairly obvious ruse, but it's great that the story makes Victoria think of it. And Deborah Watling plays it so well that I thought she was poisoned to begin with. The very first time I watched this story, I thought, oh no, Victoria's been poisoned. It's so good at making Victoria into a stronger character when had the show followed this idea of what Victorian women must be like, she could have been such a wet blanket, as I thought she used to be. So her pretending to be poisoned in the Abominable Snowmen is such a great illustration of how she isn't a wet fish, and how I was supremely mistaken. Pretty much most of it. As ever, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this monastic retreat in the mountains, then you know how YouTube works. Please do hit the like thumb and spread the word around. It really helps. And what do you think of the Abominable Snowmen? Is it a highlight of the monster season, or is it one of season 5's missteps? Has the animation saved it for you, or is this story beyond helping? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you back here soon for yet another introduction of yet another one of Doctor Who's most enduring monsters. So if you don't want to miss that, hit the subscribe button, clang the cloister bell, and I'll see you in the future.